I'm Malcolm Hornsby, a senior at the Rosie Sorrells School of Education and Social Services at Yvonne A. Ewell Townview Magnet Center. Education and Social Services is a magnet high school for students interested in careers ranging from teaching and counseling to social work, psychology, and pediatric medicine, among others. I'm joined by my fellow student, Belen Andreu. It's our privilege today to learn more about an education icon, an educator renowned for her achievements in the field of early childhood and public education. She's none other than our school's namesake, Dr. Rosie M. Collins Sorrells.
First, Malcolm, a little background about Dr. Sorrells. She graduated from Anderson High School in Austin, Texas, and earned her bachelor's degree at Houston-Tillotson College in Austin. Following graduation, she began her life's work and education in Luling, Texas, in her first teaching post where she taught several grades and worked for a time as a teacher in the Head Start program.
Inspired by that work, Dr. Sorrells' career took off and included early childhood assignments in Wilmer Hutchins ISD and Dallas ISD, where she ultimately rose to head the district's early childhood education department. Stay tuned to learn more about this education trailblazer as Belen and I have the privilege of following the many accomplishments of Dr. Rosie Collins Sorrells.
What in your early life most inspired you to become an educator?
You know, it's really difficult to say, but I think probably the most important, the thing that I remember was that my parents expected, number one, for us to continue our education and finish school. And back in those years, which was back in the 50s, there weren't many options, many alternatives particularly for African American and particularly for women. And the only option I really thought I had was to become a teacher, because it was kind of like an expectation, and that's what I had seen the most of, and that's what I knew the most about, was teaching. So it wasn't like it was something that I really planned or had an opportunity to choose. It was more like an expectation, and I think that's why I pursued education.
So you say it was like an expectation, but was it something that specifically drew you to early childhood education, or did you just fall in love with it once you got into it, or what?
I fell in love with it once I got into it. It was an opportunity that I had once I worked in my first employment in Luling, Texas, and I was a substitute teacher where I had the opportunity to sub at all levels, from first grade to the 12th grade, and all grades were in the same school, Rosenwald School. There was a primary building and middle school and high school building was all together. And having that experience, I think I just fell in love with young children. Yes.
And in your career in Luling, Texas, what are about 3 or 4 of your high points that you remember about your career?
You know, it was an exciting time, and now that I think about it, it was excellent opportunity for me to kind of explore different avenues of doing things. In a small town, Luling was a small town of about 5,000 people, maybe 4,000 to 5,000, and everybody knew everybody else there. And I had an opportunity to serve as the Cub Scout director for the Cub Scout program, and also as the leader trainer for the cheerleaders and for the majorettes.
Oh, wow.
So teachers were not just teachers, they were community workers. They served in several roles. They wore various hats. So it was a kind of like an expectation that you do some of everything, whatever it is you're asked to do, or whatever you see that needs to be done, you just do it. And so it was a little bit of a job that was more than teaching. It was doing other jobs as well.
The 1970s was an incredible decade for your career. You obtained your master's degree, and then you joined Dallas ISD. So what stands out in your mind from that period of time when you were going through obtaining your degrees and then joining the district? What were some of the things that you really liked about it and maybe not so much liked about it, or?
The 70s.
The 70s.
When I think about the 70s, I know in '69 I received my master's degree in '69. So that was kind of a transition like for me. And I moved to Dallas because the schools in Luling closed.
Okay.
So that kind of stands out in my mind. And the schools were closed because of desegregation.
Okay.
And so there were no longer the African American schools. And so somebody needed to leave the city, I leave the school district, because those schools merged. And so we moved to Dallas, and that was really a highlight for me. But I could not work in Dallas ISD because husband and wife could not work in Dallas ISD. And I forgot to tell you that I met my husband in college. And so we were in school together all along, and we were in jobs. We found our jobs together. So we met as freshmen and married as freshmen and continued our schooling. And so when we moved to Dallas, though, I wanted to tell you is that husband and wife could not work in Dallas. So I needed to find a job elsewhere. So I found a job in Wilma, Hutchins, ISD. And that stands out in my mind because I had just a tremendous, incredible kind of experience in Wilma. And I'll always remember that it was required to recruit my own students in order to teach them. Yes, I started the preschool program at Pierce Elementary School. They did not have a preschool program, a program for 4 and 5-year-olds. So I started that program, and I needed to go out in the rural areas and into the communities, knock on doors, and find children of that age. And so that stands out in my mind, recruiting my own children. And I guess the other thing during that period at Luling, I became Teacher of the Year. I think they thought I was just an eager beaver out in the community and doing so many things. And as I told you, teachers in the early years just wore many hats. I mean, they were expected to work with the PTA and to do fundraisers for for what they needed, and it was just an interesting time then. But I was there for 5 years, and I became Teacher of the Year there, and they closed that school because of desegregation again. And so after the end of 5 years, though, I applied for Dallas because that year Nolan Estes was hired, and I know you all have heard of Nolan Estes, superintendent that really had much to do with the desegregation court order. So when I applied for a job in Dallas, I was placed at City Park. City Park Elementary. So that kind of stood out in my mind, for the 70s. Yes.
Okay, and the 1976 desegregation court order, it must have changed a lot for African Americans in Dallas. So did you play any role in school integration, and what were those times like for the teachers and the students that were African American?
Well, I'll tell you, there was an interesting time, and that's a good question, because when I was hired in 1970, it was called like the crossover, where African American teachers were encouraged or selected to cross over into a school that was not African American school, white schools. And so, and also Anglo teachers were kind of encouraged to cross over into the African American schools. So I was one of those at City Park, because City Park was, I guess it was predominantly Hispanic and Anglo. And so I was recruited to go into that school, and with a new program, which was called multi-age. And so that was a new kind of experience for me, a new kind of experience for Dallas. They had not had that before. And that's simply a program that where you teach several age groups. Kindergarten, first, second grade, and that's what I had, was 3 grade levels in there, because I think during that era of time, we realized as educators that children do not all learn at the same rate, nor do they come to school at the same level of learning. And so that encouraged us to do more of individualized type instruction. So that stood out in my mind as interesting time, because it was interesting for African American teachers to be able to teach other children. After being there for a year, then I was recruited to work in the central office because there were a lot of educators who wanted to learn more about early childhood education and multi-age grouping, and so they were sent to my classroom, and to learn more about it. So, as an African American being recruited to central office, that was certainly interesting experience because there were very, very few African Americans at central office. Matter of fact, I can remember there were two.
Wow.
Because African Americans were not hired in central administration, back at that time. And one of those two people that one of those people I knew very well, which was Dr. Yvonne Ewell.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
Yes. She was one of the people that I met earlier on, and then I was privileged to be able to work with her and worked with her throughout the time in her career. The other African American person that was there was Billy Dade, and now there's a school called Billy Dade. And so those two, and Harold Lang.
Okay.
I forgot. So that's Lang School. So all three of those people now, there are schools named for them. So they were really pioneers in the desegregation. So that was a really interesting experience and a very uncomfortable kind of experience. New for the Anglos as well as new for the African Americans, being able to work together for a common cause, and that was in terms of educating kids. So there are many, many memories, about that time, that particular time, yeah.
So you received your PhD from Texas Women's University in 1987.
Yes.
So you could have been a perfectly good teacher with just a bachelor's degree. Why did you not stop and you went on to attain your master's and then your doctorate? So why didn't you stop? Why did you want to keep going?
Well, let me tell you, my philosophy in life and my philosophy about education is not unusual, but interesting. It is that it's my firm belief, and a lot of it had to do, I think, with the desegregation court order that kind of, I think, influenced my philosophy a little bit more. But my basic philosophy is that you need to be the best that you can be in order to do a good job. And another one is there are no excuses. Absolutely no excuses for any job that you're in to do. You just keep working until you can do better, on that job. And I believe the only way to be better and to do a good job, you have to keep learning.
Exactly.
Every day you have to. It's never complete. You don't finish. You continue to study and you try to find better ways, to do your best, on any job. So I just thought, since I'm going to continue, I will continue learning. I will continue to take courses. I will continue to do many things. For instance, let me give you an example. I volunteered to participate in an urban education study group where I traveled to all of the urban school districts in the United States, pretty much. Wow. Chicago was one of the first ones we reviewed. California, these people, they had early childhood programs. New York, and they had a really outstanding early childhood program. I can remember those. So on that tour, I met a lot of people and learned a lot of different things that were being done to improve education. And I tell you, the thing that really stood out in my mind is that the early years are the most critical. It's all of them important, but building that foundation in order to be successful in life, there is no doubt in my mind that that's the right thing to do. But at any rate, after traveling on the urban education studies, I traveled to Europe to view the British Infant School. And so I said that to say that continuing your education and continuing to learn, I guess, is the best thing one can do in order to do the best job he can do on your career, in your career. And so that's my philosophy, is that your work is never done. You keep working, and as long as in education, as long as there are children who are not succeeding, then you haven't finished.
Exactly.
You know, you have to keep working until you serve all the children. That's that's just a must.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what advice would you give a young person who wants to enter the education field?
That was almost it. Okay. The advice that I would give young people: don't go into it unless it's a passion for you. Do not go into it unless it's a passion. That's the first thing. Unless you have a commitment to do your very best, and unless you have a commitment that you value every child, and that you will work until your work is not done, but you will work to see that every child can learn to the best of your ability.
Yeah.
And you don't give up, but you just keep doing that. And so my advice is to do not go into education unless you have a passion for it, unless you have a commitment to the child and to that child's family as well. And I would say to continue studying and continuing your education all the way, and just when you are hired on the job, you have not finished.
Right.
You still need to learn, and as long as you have children under your care, you have a responsibility to make sure that you do your best. And when they can't, and when you cannot do it, make sure you find help to do it. So I would say my advice to anybody who want to go into education: don't go in looking to point a finger and to blame anybody but yourself, and to keep working as hard as you can to do the best that you can do, so that you can know that you've done your actual honest best. Yeah.
So what do you consider one of the major challenges for public education today?
Oh, there are many. One is, I think, convincing legislators and the public that you need to fund it in order to get the best out of it. And so I would say that the biggest challenge is to make sure that the people you elect, the people that to represent you in making decisions, that make sure, number one, is that they can do that, and that they have a commitment to do that. And I almost forgot on that. What was the question again, Mike?
What do you see as one of the major concerns in public education?
Oh, yeah, I was talking about the funding. Yes, the funding thing. And selecting, another challenge is the reason the funding drives that is because you're not going to get top-notch leaders and teachers into education if you're not paying much for it. They are going to the jobs where they can receive it. So another challenge, I think, is finding out ways to work better with the parents and with the community, those children. We have to remember, first of all, that the children belong to the parents, and the parents are the first teachers, so we need to learn better how to do that. That's a big challenge. I believe another one is accountability. Learning how we can better hold schools and teachers accountable. I think we're not sure about that, and I think part of that has to do with testing.
Yeah.
That's another challenge. How do we pay people based upon what the job that they've done? You hear a lot of fighting about that. And teachers finding excuses. So we have a lot of challenges, and I think another challenge is being able to change. Yeah, that's a challenge. We don't want to change. We want to do the things the same way, and we have to realize that if you keep doing what you're doing, you keep getting what you're getting, and so we have to be ready to change. And I think that technology is changing so rapidly. We're going to have to learn to use it in education to our advantage to better educate our children. So we have tons of challenges, and we have children with so many needs. We have so much violence in the schools now, and so many other challenges that teachers are not really trained to be able to do. But I think the greatest challenge is finding good leadership, you know, for our school, and that's it, because you just need good leadership in order to. That's like a football team. You know, you look at the quarterback and the one who can call the you know, the plays, and then to get everybody, and everybody having a responsibility, and to get those people and their responsibility in a way that you can win. And we have to win with children, and that's basically it. So we have many challenges in education, but I don't think in America we have a choice. We don't have a choice. If we want to be a great country and continue to be leaders in the world, we're going to have to better educate, you know, our citizens. And right now we're not number one. We had enjoyed being number one for a long time. And we have to know that education is the foundation to everything that we do. It doesn't matter whether you're a banker or a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, it's still education is the foundation. And when you can go out and say that with confidence and know that that is what it is, and I can't imagine anybody debating about the economy or anything else unless you know that education is the foundation to all of it. So we have many challenges and many I guess things to do. It's much to be done, and every citizen, your classmates, and everybody has a responsibility. We all were put on this earth to work toward making the country a better place. And so my question is to anybody that I talk to most of the time, what are you doing? You know, you live in here for free. You know, this is your country. This is my country. But I'm doing my part. And what are you doing? And how do you feel about what you're doing, you know, with that? So you got to go out there and speak with confidence and authority to try to help to make our country great again. Yes.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you.
On behalf of our administrators, teachers, and fellow students, thanks so much for giving us the privilege of helping them to learn more about you and your incredible accomplishments.
Oh, my goodness.
Thank you
it's
so
just
much.
been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And I've just been honored. Thank you so much. Thank you.